The words hung in the air between us, suspended like dust motes in the Sunday afternoon light streaming through my parents' dining room window. "Sweetie, we can't afford to take both girls to Europe. Rachel really needs this trip." My fork froze halfway to my mouth, a piece of roast beef suddenly tasteless as my stomach contracted into a hard knot. My father didn't even look up from his plate as he nodded in agreement, the familiar crease between his brows deepening. I set my fork down slowly, the silverware making a soft clink against fine china I had paid for last Christmas. My voice emerged steadier than the trembling in my fingers would suggest. "What about me?" Dad finally glanced up, his expression a perfect blend of confusion and dismissal. "Honey, you can take your own vacation anytime. You have that good job." That good job. The one that had been paying their mortgage for the past decade. The one that funded the car my sister was currently driving. The one that kept the lights on in this very house where I was now being told I wasn't worth including. My name is Olivia. I'm 28 and a financial analyst. This is the story of how I stopped being my family's ATM and became the author of my own life. For as long as I could remember, I had been the family's silent support beam, the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who would always say yes when money was needed. Rachel was different, vivacious, impulsive, perpetually in some new crisis that required immediate financial intervention. She was the golden child, the one whose dreams mattered enough to fund. It began in small ways when I landed my first real job after college. Mom calling with a tremor in her voice about the heating bill they couldn't quite cover. Dad mentioning offhand that the property taxes had gone up again. Rachel needing just a little help with her rent until her influencer career took off. That little help had ballooned into $800 monthly transfers since I was 20. I called it family support. They called it my duty. Every time I hesitated, the same phrases would follow. "Family takes care of family. You've always been the selfish one. Your sister would do it for you." When I finally bought myself a new car after driving the same rusted sedan for 9 years, Mom had frowned during a video call. "Do you really need something that fancy? Rachel's car is making that noise again." I transferred $4,000 the next day. Rachel posted photos of her new ride without mentioning who paid for it. Last year, on my birthday, they had let me choose the restaurant. I selected a modest Italian place I'd wanted to try. As the check arrived, Dad pushed it toward me with a wink. "Your treat, right?" I laughed because the alternative was to cry, and crying wasn't allowed in the Mitchell family, not unless you were Rachel, whose tears were always emergency sirens demanding immediate attention. That night, Mom called. "Sweetie, Rachel's behind on rent again. You can cover it, can't you?" Her voice was soft, guilt wrapped in maternal concern. And I said yes. Again. In college, I skipped spring break to work overtime at the campus bookstore. The bonus went straight to Mom's credit card bill. Meanwhile, Rachel posted poolside photos with the caption "Family First." She meant my wallet. After that Sunday dinner, something inside me went quiet. Not broken, just done. The kind of silence that comes when you finally hear the truth beneath all the noise. I had been funding a family that never truly included me. That evening, I drove home with city lights blurring through my windshield. For the first time in years, I opened my banking app and began scrolling through transaction after transaction like a detective revisiting a cold case. 10 years of helping, 10 years of watching my savings account shrink while their lifestyle expanded on my dime. The numbers were staggering once I added them up. $96,000 in mortgage payments. $47,000 in household purchases. A refrigerator, washer, dryer, furniture, Rachel's car. All of it sitting in that house while I lived in a modest apartment with second-hand furniture because saving for family emergencies had always taken priority over my own comfort. I thought about every thank you that never came. Every time they'd said, "You're so lucky to have a good job," as if my hard work was a privilege rather than the reason they could afford to live without worry. That weekend, I printed every receipt, every text message where they'd promised to pay me back when things got better. I organized them into color-coded folders, each one a chapter in the story of my invisible contributions. I wanted concrete evidence that my generosity wasn't just a family myth I'd created. Then, I made an appointment with a lawyer. She flipped through my meticulous records with raised eyebrows. "Most people don't keep documentation like this," she remarked. "I guess I learned to document everything when love came with terms and conditions," I replied. She smiled sadly. "Then you already know your worth." She explained that legally, ownership remains with whoever paid unless formally transferred in writing. Every major item I'd purchased over the years was still technically mine. That sentence settled in my chest like oxygen after drowning. I walked out of her office lighter. Not happy yet, but clear-eyed. 4 years, I thought leaving meant betrayal. Now I understood that staying had been the real betrayal of myself. I started searching for apartments in Portland, a city I'd always loved but never dared to claim. The proximity to forests, the creative energy. It felt like a life I hadn't earned yet. But maybe I finally could. At night, I'd sit by my window, watching the city skyline flicker against the glass. My laptop glowed with listings, each click a small act of rebellion. Between tabs for moving companies and rental quotes, I created a new folder titled My Life. For the first time, I wasn't saving documents as proof, I was saving plans for freedom. At work, I requested remote status. My manager didn't even hesitate. "You've earned the freedom, Olivia," she said. That one sentence felt more loving than anything my parents had said in years. I stopped answering every family text immediately. I paused before saying yes to another emergency. Each hesitation felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I hadn't realized had been rented out. As the flight confirmation for my family's Europe trip appeared in our shared chat, I felt something unexpected: clarity. The day they boarded that plane, I stopped being their backup plan. They left on a Tuesday morning. 3 suitcases, 1 oversized tote, and a promise to FaceTime from Paris. Mom kissed my cheek like she was doing me a favor. "Keep the house plants alive, honey," she said. Rachel smirked from the backseat. "Don't miss us too much," she laughed. Their car disappeared down the street. I stood on the driveway and exhaled. The air felt different, still sharp with early spring, but somehow mine. By 9 a.m., I made my first call. "Hi, this is Olivia Peterson. I'd like to schedule a pickup for tomorrow." The moving company specialized in delicate transitions, families splitting assets, quiet separations, stories that didn't need retelling. Karen, the coordinator, didn't ask for details. She just said, "We'll handle it carefully." That night, I walked through my parents' house one last time. Every corner whispered with memories I no longer wanted to keep. The refrigerator I bought humming in the kitchen. The washer spinning softly in the laundry room. The couch where I'd once cried behind Rachel's laughter. Everything here bore my fingerprints except love. I took photos for documentation, each click a small goodbye. It wasn't vengeance, it was accounting. Wednesday morning, the trucks arrived. 2 men in grey uniforms, polite and efficient. I handed them my folder, receipts, inventory, serial numbers. They didn't need explanations. They'd seen this story before. The refrigerator went first, then the furniture, the washer, the new television, Rachel's vanity desk. Piece by piece, the illusion of family comfort disappeared. By late afternoon, the house looked hollow, like a stage set after the curtain falls. I left the old sofa in the living room, the faded floral one Mom used to complain about. It felt poetic, leaving them with their past. Before locking the door, I placed an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside, receipts, copies of bank statements, and a letter. "Mom, Dad, Rachel. Everything I've taken was paid for by me. For a decade, I funded your lives while you called me selfish. I'm done being useful only when it's convenient. Consider this repayment for every favor that became an obligation. The house you'll return to is the one you built without me." I slid the key through the mail slot. The sound was final, like a door closing on an old version of myself. Driving away, the rearview mirror showed nothing but sky. No guilt, no fear, just quiet. That night, I slept deeper than I had in years. My phone lit up with missed calls, but I didn't answer. They were still somewhere over the Atlantic, blissfully unaware that their return ticket was to a stripped home. By the time their plane landed, I'd already crossed the state line and crossed out the role they'd written for me. The sunrise that morning hit differently, no weight on my chest, no names in my inbox demanding more. For the first time, the silence felt like peace. Not absence, but beginning. And that beginning was mine. They landed on a Sunday night. My phone started buzzing before I'd even finished unpacking boxes. First Mom, then Dad, then Rachel, and one text that said it all. "What have you done?" I didn't reply. Instead, I poured myself coffee and sat by the window of my new apartment. Peace, I discovered, was louder than their panic. By noon, my inbox filled with fury. Mom's message came first, long paragraphs about betrayal, family, and disrespect. She called me cruel. Dad's was colder. "This is theft, Olivia. You can't just take what you gave." And Rachel, her voice note was a minute of sobbing. "How could you ruin my life like this?" I almost laughed. Ruin her life? I'd simply stopped financing it. That evening, my lawyer called. "They filed a police report," he said calmly. "Claimed you stole their property." I sighed. "Let me guess, no receipts, no proof." He chuckled. "None. I already sent documentation. The officer said they don't have a case." For once, justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, patient, methodical, like me. The next morning, I woke to an email from Dad. The final line, "You'll regret this when you're alone." I wrote back one sentence, "I've never been less alone in my life." Days passed. The messages kept coming. Threats, guilt trips, rewritten histories. They said I'd had a breakdown, that I was unstable, that I'd lost touch with family values. But each accusation felt weaker than the last because truth has a calmness lies can't imitate. 2 weeks later, Rachel called from an unknown number. I answered. Her voice was small. "Olivia, please. We came home to nothing." "I left what was yours and took what was mine," I replied. "I can't work without my setup," she whispered. "Then build it yourself," I said. "Like I built mine." She tried one more angle. "Mom's been crying for days. Be reasonable." Reasonable was 10 years, I said. "This is fairness." Silence stretched between us. Then a sniff. "Do you hate me?" "I don't," I replied honestly. "I just stopped funding you." I notified building security that my family wasn't allowed past the lobby. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're my instructions on how to love me. A certified letter arrived next. A lawsuit threat. My lawyer handled it in 3 sentences. Every item was purchased and documented by my client. Further contact will be considered harassment. Silence followed. Real silence this time. Not absence, detachment. 4 years, they'd controlled me with obligation, made me believe love was something you earned by paying. But now, every call I ignored, every dollar I kept was a line drawn in permanent ink. I wasn't their provider anymore. I wasn't their emotional vault or financial cushion. I was Olivia, whole, solvent, unapologetic. And for the first time, they were the ones left empty-handed. It's been 5 months since the last message. The silence feels different now, earned, not forced. At first, I kept checking my phone, half expecting another guilt trip disguised as love. But the quiet stayed, and in that quiet, I started to hear myself again. Mornings don't start with panic anymore. They start with sunlight through tall windows, coffee brewed for one, and a kind of peace that used to feel impossibly expensive. I've learned that freedom doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it just looks like paying your own bills and knowing nobody else has a claim on your joy. I still think about my family sometimes, not with anger, just distance. I hope they're okay. But I've stopped mistaking their comfort for my responsibility. I used to think leaving meant losing everything. Now I know it meant finding what was left of me. I'm learning how to buy things for myself without the echo of guilt. How to say no without explaining. How to rest without permission. Portland feels like rebirth. I hike on weekends, work with people who respect my boundaries, and am dating someone who doesn't flinch when I say I need space. My life isn't perfect, but it's finally mine, paid for in full, in cash and clarity. If you've ever been called selfish for choosing yourself, hear me clearly. You are not selfish. You are surviving. You are allowed to stop pouring into people who only ever take. Have you ever faced something like this? You're not alone. Because peace isn't passive, it's the loudest kind of strength. And sometimes the quietest revenge is finally living.